apologize for being about 10 minutes behind schedule. We were upstairs recognizing the significant our contributions of the Monument Hill Kiwanis Club partnership, and we appreciate all that they do. Ms. Wood, I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Pop.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Here. Aye.
All right, excellent. Do we have any Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts in the audience this evening?
We're willing to admit it.
All right. Ma'am, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, to view this meeting's presentation documents, please access Board Docs. The link to Board Docs website can be found via the D38 website on Board of Education meetings /webpage.
Don't mind the man behind the curtain.
Okay, the public comment guidelines. Per policy DEDH, public participation at school board meetings, there is one time for public comment, and it is limited to 30 minutes in an effort to allow all who wish to speak. The amount of time dedicated to each speaker will depend upon the number of people who will sign up, with the entire public comment period not exceeding 30 minutes. If 10 people or less sign up, each person will have 3 minutes to address the board. The sign-up sheet for the public comments will be available at 5 p.m. in the Learning Center meeting room. All speakers will be asked to limit their remarks to the time allotted based on the total number of speakers not to exceed 3 minutes per person. If a group of people have a similar concern, the board requests that a spokesman for the group be selected. The board respects the rights of the public to speak on matters concerning the operation of the schools. We believe that public comments that are critical of district staff, however, often cause unnecessary harm to those employees and to the education of our students. As a result, we prefer that members of the public share any criticisms of employees in writing with the superintendent, who is responsible for supervising all staff, then involving the board as necessary. If you choose instead to address a personnel issue publicly, please understand that the board does not endorse the comments of any speaker and reminds all who speak that they assume the risk of legal action by district employees in the event the affected employees believe that any comments about them violate legal standards. Lastly, keep in mind we have K-12 students in the audience. Please keep your comments appropriate to our audience. All right, next agenda item is additions to approve the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add an executive session prior to the opening of the meeting with recognitions and comments to discuss matters that may be subject to negotiations in accordance with CRS 246402 subsection 4E, and discuss the lease or sale of real property in accordance with CRS 246402 4A.
Okay. I will second that.
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Do we have discussion?
Aye.
Hang on, let's take that back. Would you like to have any questions, comments, concerns before we take a vote?
Are we moving the executive session that was at the end of the meeting and moving it to the front? Or are we still doing 2 executive sessions?
Well, we may not need the executive session on the end.
Okay.
Okay. Any other additional questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Pop.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
Okay. And so since we modified the agenda, do we need to make the same motion again?
To approve.
Okay. And we would like to invite Ms. Wangaman and Ms. Broff to join us. We're upstairs. are back on the record. Appreciate your patience as we went into executive session. It's now time for public comments. I have a list in front of me, and there is 14 individuals listed. And if my math serves me correctly, that leaves 2.1 minutes per person. Sorry about that, that's board policy. So if any of you are speaking on the same topic, you might want to consider speaking as a group so you have a little more time. And Ms. Upchurch, do you have a stopwatch with you?
No, sir.
All right. No, I'll go ahead and take care of it. All right, Ms. Tammy John is our first speaker. Ma'am, if you come up by the microphone.
Okay, I would like to just recognize those 4 board members that voted in favor of Monument Academy being on the bond. The vote to do so acknowledges that all D38 children are important and matter. This is the first time in the 20+ years that I have witnessed something that unites and supports D38's own charter with funds. The 1999 mill levy override, where D38 excluded Monument Academy from funds, has not provided documentation showing that the administrators at that time knew they would be excluded. The language on the 1999 ballot itself included all D38 schools, and it did not alert voters that certain children would be excluded. So again, I would like to thank those for including Monument Academy on the bond.
Sean Tucker.
Good evening. I'm Sean Tucker. Been a resident of Monument for over 20 years, 25 years in the Air Force. Raised our 4 kids here in Monument. My youngest son was a graduate of Lewis Palmer, went on to receive his bachelor's degree, so thank you, Lewis Palmer, for doing that. I want to speak with you this evening regarding the rehab facility that's going in next to our Lewis Palmer Middle School. That is a direct violation of the drug-free school zone laws, and it's directly across the street from Lewis Palmer Middle School. I want to quote a study from the Redlands Police Department that indicated a large percentage of rehab facility patients have criminal records. This includes sex offenders, and a drug treatment center functions as a crime attractor in our community. As these drug and mental health facilities act as crime attractors, they will attract drug sales, drug use, sex offenders, drug sellers to our community. This proposed facility will increase the customer base for drug markets and increase the sexual offenses against our children. I want to quote D38's strategic mission and mission statement that says their mission is to develop a safe and nurturing environment for our children, which includes the mandatory safe schools policy. If D38 allows this proposed drug facility next to Lewis Palmer Middle School, D38 will be in direct violation of its own strategic vision, mission statement, and safe schools policy. D38 will not be providing a safe and secure learning environment for our children, and D38 will be violating its own value of doing what's right for kids. Most importantly, D38 will be jeopardizing our children's safety by allowing our children to be educated directly next to a known drug facility. This is a direct violation of the previous laws I stated, as well as Colorado's drug-free school zone laws. I would like to request that D38 must realize that this is an open campus drug treatment facility. That means that drug and mental patients, visitors, can freely come and go as they please. D38 must immediately take steps to protect our children from the meth heads, the crack heads, the paranoid schizophrenics, and the sex offenders that will make up the drug and mental health patients for this facility. They'll be allowed to come freely from their facility. Am I running out of time?
You are out, sir.
And then wander into local school zones and our residential communities. We've got to stop it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I apologize in advance for mispronouncing this name. Sorke Choi? Soki. I apologize, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, board members. My name is Soki. I live in Monument for 6 years. I'm here today because I'm really worried about our children's safety. So I'm going to speak to you from my personal experience. Our family moved to Monument from Southern Orange County in 2012. My office is still back in Costa Mesa. So I still go back there a few times a year to meet with the team. So that place has changed dramatically. And these are nice places like Monument. When I lived there, I used to be able to go jogging. However, nowadays I can't do that. So what has changed? The addiction rehab industry flooded in. Nowadays, when I go out for lunch and when I walk on the street, I am increasingly accosted by people asking for handouts. And there was even a case of indecent exposure. So when I heard about this, I am really worried. A few cities made their data available with respect to rehab facilities and crime. But I will just focus on Costa Mesa, where my office and my experience are. The mayor of Costa Mesa stated, "We're starting to understand that crime is directly related to the increase in the recovery home in our city." In Costa Mesa, between 2011 and 2016, the drug violations rose 361%. Auto thefts went up 104%, and prostitution reports rose 388%. And there are several addiction rehab cities have similar increase in crime rates. So it is absurd that I went to the town hall, I listened to them, and they claim that the facility will have no effect.
Thank you.
I lived
That's
it.
your time.
So I urge you to Google Rehab Riviera, learn about it, and help us to oppose it. Thank you.
Stephen Kittle.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Kittle. Just kind of voice the concerns of the previous two speakers. I just moved here with my wife, just got out of the Army in February. Really excited to be part of this community and grow and develop with them. So again, about this rehabilitation facility they're trying to put across from the middle school, important distinguishment I'd like to make is that it's for profit. And I would encourage anybody, especially those sitting in the crowd, pull up your smartphone and just Google for-profit drug rehabilitation. Read the articles from ABC, Huffington Post, Forbes, the New York Times. Just read the articles. My concern is that this industry has a terrible track record, and my tolerance for risk for terrible industry track records when this close to a school is pretty low. And if you look at this industry, I don't believe this industry, when privately funded, has enough regulation and enough oversight to guarantee and collateralize any promises SBH makes. And so I hope the school board will come out with a position on how they feel about this facility, because I think there's plenty of concerned citizens that would just like to hear what your thoughts on this topic are. That's all I have to say. Have a great evening.
Stacy Gerber.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Gerber. My family and I are retired military, and we chose Monument for a number of reasons. And I want to highlight the reasons to you, because I too have concerns about the rehab facility. First, we love Colorado. We were lucky enough to be stationed here quite a few times, and we said we were coming back to make it home. The school ratings in this community are phenomenal, and the welcoming and safe environment where we could raise our family. And that to me is critical. We've experienced multiple moves, on average every 2 years. So when I came into Monument looking for a house the first week of May this year is when we found our forever home. So thank you. What I'm concerned about, though, are the children's safety, mine included. My kids are high school and middle school. I will make sure that I drive my daughter to middle school. I will pick her up every day. I will do that for her because of that concern. I don't know what a rehab facility located in the middle of a number of schools will do to the community. But I do have reservations. So what I'm asking is, how is the school district going to help parents and the community ensure our children remain safe? Because that's my number one concern. I know I've stated that, but they're our future. They're going to be replacing us one day here. And what I don't want to do is explain to a society that says, how did we let this happen? And on one other note, I just need to highlight for my child in middle school. She wanted to know today why there are not more sports available to girls in middle school. She loves soccer, and she's going to play for the high school when she goes there. But in her mind, she really thinks it's unfair. So I would ask if you guys can point me in the right direction, please let me know, because I'd like to advocate for that change too. And thank you.
Jackie Burhans.
Hello. I know that you have heard some concerns from the community about including construction bond funds for MA along with the other bond information, the other bond funds that we had. And I want to talk about one of the reasons why people have concerns. It has to do with the ever-changing nature of the plans for what was called MA High School when you guys approved the application in November with conditions. It started out as just a high school, 4 grades, 118 students per grade. Then it was changed to include middle school. There was discussion on the current facility that would open up some seats for elementary. That number got increased. There was talk about adding a floor, which would add more seats. Then it was changed to let's have money to build a gym and an auditorium for the now middle/high school. And then it was, well, let's just provide some funds. So trying to wrap my mind around all of this, I went back to look for the MAHS application to see what the plan said so I understand where we are. And the only thing I could find was what you guys approved in November with conditions. And that kind of concerns me. So what I would like to ask, whatever you finally vote for, whatever we finally do as a community, is that we see those plans updated so that we see that it includes middle and high school. We see that it includes a gym and an auditorium. We see that it does incorporate the conditions that you put on it when you improved it that came from DAC, that came from the Charter School Institute. I'd like to understand any changes to financing based on what the outcome is. I'd like to understand what the total cost of the school will be. We have a couple people thinking they can build the whole school for $3.5 million. We all should know that's not actually possible. What is the total cost when it's at build-out would be very useful. We'd like to understand what exactly is being built, what are the building standards for charter schools versus traditional neighborhood public schools. And finally, and this is the most important, I think it's imperative that the district, which is charged with the well-being of the students at the traditional public neighborhood schools, as well as authorization and oversight of the charter schools, ensure that there is a district-led oversight committee that will report on the implementation to make sure what's get built is what was planned. Thanks.
If it's all right, I'll be the one to call the time. Thank you. Laura Certain, did I pronounce that correctly? I don't know that it's working.
It is. It's working.
All right. Sorry about that.
Good evening. Thank you for your service. I know that your positions are all voluntary time from what I understand, that you're non-paid positions, and I thank you for your time with our community. My name's Laura Curtin. My husband and I have lived in Woodmore for 25 years. I recently attended the community meeting sponsored by an organization called NES concerning the Drug Rehabilitation Center to be located in Woodmore. I was stunned and amazed to find out at that meeting that District 38 leadership has taken a position on this critical issue. They said at the meeting that District 38 was for that facility, which I thought was hard to believe. When the meth clinic threatened to reside next to District 38 Elementary School a few years back, District 38 Sally waited too long to object to that project. There's no more time to sit on the sidelines with this. It's happening. Take a position right now and clearly articulate so we, District 38 voters, know where you stand individually and as a group. It will help me and my husband when we cast our ballots in November. In the end, it's about trust. Trust in our school board. Trust in knowing that you will spend our tax dollars prudently. Thank you.
Amy McKenzie.
I believe we have to do what's best for every child. My kids have done homeschool, public school, charter school, and even a blended learning school. 15% of D38 students go to Monument Academy. Monument Academy is the only school in the district at capacity with a 275 student waiting list. So it makes sense to include them in any district decisions. And the wait list shows parents want charter school seats. Since I have followed the actions of this district over the past 3 years, I have witnessed the cancellation of community coffees, an increase in executive sessions, today too, the only public inclusion in decisions being at facilitated predetermined meetings. These things promote community distrust. If you want to pass a bond or MLO, you have to include all stakeholders, not just the 20 hand-selected members of the Long Range Planning Committee, half of which was made up of current or past district employees, and the rest of committee members with vested interests in the building of a new school. How can you ask taxpayers for money to build a new school when at the same time using a $200,000 annual advertising budget to solicit out-of-district students to come here? How can you say schools are full when preschool takes up space in the schools and is not mandated by Colorado? I'm asking you to educate us in open two-way conversations showing all data and explaining growth in detail. I'm requesting that any bond measure includes an itemized breakdown and plan, and for any extra dollars that could possibly be left over. All students matter, all parents and stakeholders matter. Rebuilding trust matters. You cannot continue to ignore us until it's time to ask us for money. Spend our money like it's yours. Thank you.
Steve Waldman.
I'm Steve Waldman, and I recently watched a video of the school board's meeting at the end of May. In that meeting, the board decided to arm our security guards, hire an additional armed security guard, and armed staff. I suspect that you made that decision because you believed that it was an appropriate way to lessen the danger that our children face at school. I suspect that you believe that our kids are in danger of being killed by an armed intruder into our schools. While I will concede that that's a possibility, the likelihood of it occurring is extremely small. Based upon the horror stories that we see on the news about school shootings and encouraged by the propaganda coming from the NRA, many people, and I believe that this board is included, believe that a large number of our children are killed by guns in school every year and that the problem is getting worse. In fact, those people are wrong. Approximately 25 children are killed by guns in school every year. While this is very sad, the number has been decreasing over time. During the 1990s, nearly 40 children were killed every year in school shootings. There are about 50 million kids in school in America. Therefore, the chance of a child being killed because of gunfire at school is about 1 in 2 million. Your actions are putting an irrational fear into our children and are wasting our limited educational dollars. If you wanted to do something that would truly make our kids safer, you could take more aggressive action to reduce the number of our kids who commit suicide. Like I said before, about 25 kids are killed per year in school shootings. About 1,800 kids die every year because of suicide. Our kids are about 70 times more likely to die from suicide than they are to die from a school shooting. That is where you should be devoting your efforts. As far as I'm aware, in the last 3.5 years in El Paso County, there have been 0 kids killed in school because of gunfire. However, according to this article from the July 6, 2018 edition of the Colorado Springs Gazette, during that same period, 44 of our kids have committed suicide.
Time, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. I don't know if you heard me, but that's time.
Okay, thank you.
Tammy Otry. Okay. Thank you. Adam Deal. And can you in the audience hear me? Do I need to speak up? Okay, this is one of the few times in my entire life people say they can't hear me, so I will do a better job.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name's Adam Dill. I live in the area. My whole family lives up here. My little sister's in Woodmore. Cousins are in Jackson Creek, Woodcrest. I'm also a real estate agent, and just wanted to bring to your attention just what I hear and what I experience pretty much on a day-to-day basis now in regards to Monument Academy. Is I have lots of young families move here, get a hold of me, and by their own discover Monument Academy, whether it's online or through other friends, want to come to the area, and then I tell them, well, make sure to contact the school, see what your ages are and what the waiting lists are. In this past year alone, I've had my own brother-in-law with his 5 kids not be able to get in, my little sister not be able to get her son in, and they live in this neighborhood. We all do as a family. We love this area. So I just think it's invaluable for the board to really consider getting Monument Academy on this bond initiative, finding out how we can relieve some of that burden that's upon it, and really realize the jewel that we have up here. Monument Academy gets us a lot of recognition. I get a lot of people that want to move up here, and then they get frustrated, and then they end up back in District 20. So I'm thinking that we're losing a lot of opportunity for growth up here, for a lot of new families to move up here with this opportunity. So I just wanted to bring that to you from someone who lives up here, does real estate, give you a little bit of a different perspective. So thank you so much. We appreciate all of you.
Sarah Hardin. Sarah Hardman. Okay. Last call for Sarah Hardman. Vandy Mason.
Hi there, my name is Vandy Mason. I have 4 children in D38 schools. They all happen to be currently at Monument Academy in kindergarten through middle school. I chose Monument Academy years ago, quite frankly, because I could choose Monument Academy. And so I would like to encourage you all to keep Monument Academy on the bond issue, because having choice in schools is never a bad thing. If my version of parenting is putting up with that car line, putting up with uniforms, so that my kids can learn cursive first and my kids can have a classical education, that is my choice. And the school district's job is to support the ability to have that choice in supporting all the students in the district and all the hardworking taxpayers in the district. If another parent has the choice to walk their kids to a neighborhood school, which I don't happen to have in my neighborhood, that is their choice of whatever they prefer in the curriculum and the teachers and the principals that they like at those schools. I just want to encourage you to know that 15% only going through 8th grade is a huge number, and that school is bursting at the seams with the wait list, as other people have mentioned. It is your job as the school board to respect all the taxpayers. Personally, my family and my extended family owns 8 properties that pay taxes in this district. One of those households, my own, is the only one with students in the school district, and all of those students are at Monument Academy. So it sounds petty, but I feel personally slighted to think that my family would be paying that many thousands of dollars in taxes and not have my own children supported. So in my personal choice, it is important that Monument Academy is included on anything that I'm going to vote for. Thank you.
Lori Strahan.
Hello, my name is Lori Strahan, and I have a daughter in 8th grade in Monument Academy, and she's attended that school for the last 3 years. I believe that Monument Academy should be included in the bond issue for a variety of reasons. The main reason being that the inclusion of Monument Academy in the bond issue will actually benefit the entire district. So let me explain to you how I think that would benefit the entire district. As you know, our district is growing tremendously. General contractors are seeing an 8% growth in new construction year after year. We have many students coming into this district. Monument Academy is opening up a 6th through 12th grade school, and the first year that that school will open, it will be able to accommodate 552 students. So that takes some burden off the other high schools. By the 3rd year that Monument Academy's high school is open, it will accommodate 826 students. When this school opens, the K through 6 Monument Academy school, that will actually free up 350 seats in our elementary school. So by freeing up 350 seats in our elementary school, in effect, the district will be obtaining almost the equivalent of a new elementary school. To me, that's exciting. That is a win-win situation. We are accommodating many elementary students. This is an extremely economical use of tax money and one of the greatest advantages of working with MA. Another reason I think MA should be included is that 15% of the voting public represents Monument Academy parents. Since I hope that we have taxation with representation, I would hope that therefore MA would also be included on the bond, since 15% of the voting population represents and supports MA. Lastly, there's many reasons to include MA, but my personal favorite is because MA holds a special place in my heart and my daughter's heart. That school has been very special to us, nurturing, supportive, academic, and educational, and it has been a very positive experience for my daughter.
That's your time, ma'am. All right, that concludes our... Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one individual, Julie Kime.
My name is Julie Kime. I have lived in Monument in the past. I don't currently. I live in Larkspur, but I do have a child that goes to Palmer Ridge High School, so I believe I have a right to speak here. I wanted to let you know that I have been in Douglas County and witnessed what has gone on in Douglas County for the last 8 years, and I'm afraid I'm seeing that happen here as well. We had some detrimental things happen in Douglas County. As most of you know, the performance of the students failed miserably. The reforms did not work, and yet I see them being brought to Lewis Palmer now. I want to talk to you a little bit about what kind of precedents you're setting when you vote on a bond to be included, paid by taxpayer dollars. First, I'd just like to educate a little bit about bonds and how they work and how funding works between charter schools and district schools. Each schools get their PPR, right? They get what the state gives you. I just heard a number of like 800 some odd people and figured out that'll be another $6 million a year to Monument Academy once that school is open. So they both get the PPR. We now have a law that requires that both get the same MLO funds too, right? So everything's equal there until we get to what really is required of those schools, and then we get to the bonds, right? So charter schools are able to issue bonds with the backing of the state to get low interest rates through a foundation in Colorado. There's no reason that Monument Academy can't go through that process, and I'm a little confused about why all of it can't be funded through that process. District schools are funded through bond levies that are approved by the voters and come out of a tax levy. It's important not to set a precedence, I think, of allowing charter schools to have tax-funded dollars, and let me explain why. The very first page of what I've given you are a waiver of all of the things that Monument Academy does not have to do. Now think about that all of our public schools do have to do all of those things. There is a significant cost to meeting those needs of students. Did you all know, I can go through a list of, just think about, the charter schools do not provide transportation. They do not provide meals, subsidized meals. They're not required to. They may provide them, but they should make as much money as they cost. They don't have to.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, that's your time.
Oh, gosh. Okay, thank you.
All right, that concludes our public comments. Now we'll move forward to board comments. Anyone like to start off, or Mr. Poff, would you like to start?
Just give me a second. I want to thank everyone for coming out and coming up to the microphone. Sometimes that's challenging for some people. Some people love to get to a microphone. But I want to thank everybody for coming out and expressing their opinions. That's what makes America so great, is that we have an open democracy where, well, republic, but about the same, to where people have this representation. I did want to kind of clear something up. I didn't know if Cheryl wanted to clear it up later, but as it comes to the rehab center, we did not, as a school district, from the admin, do you want to explain that later, or do you?
Whenever you'd like me to explain it, I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, but if you want to do it now, that'd be great, or you can.
Sure. So the school district found out about the Ramada almost about the same time that the public did. And let me give you a disclaimer. I worked the issue with our Chief of Security, Mr. Coates. Know that I live 2 blocks from there. So please know that on the personal side. We first did, though, as a school district, look to see what could be done as far as the school district's position on such a thing. And we quickly found out through the laws, other than our elected board stating an opinion, our duty was to keep the children safe. We don't have a say, if you will, as a school district around how things are zoned. So with that, we did contact the new ownership and had our Chief of Security spend quite a bit of time with the new ownership, understanding what they were doing and why, because our duty is to do the very best we can to keep our children safe. So that's the work that we've taken so far. Personally, I've been told that as a school district official, it was announced at that meeting that I stated that the board took a positive reaction to the rehab center coming in. In fact, that is not the case. We did contact folks at the meeting and tried to confirm exactly what was stated, and she informed us that she stated exactly what I had stated to her in an email, which reads, "The district takes no position on this facility. We're going to have our Chief of Safety and Security walk the facility with the new owner." And then it goes on from there. But do know, the district did not take a position in favor of the rehab facility. Our only work thus far is to make sure that we can do what we can to make sure that our children are safe around the facility.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
So again, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out and speaking tonight, and that's basically it.
I have some, is it okay if I go next?
Absolutely, Ms. Phillips.
Thank you. I, as well, would like to reflect Mark's thoughts about thanking everybody for coming out. It's especially helpful to hear public viewpoint, and I still feel like I speak as a new member, the newest member of the board, and I am still learning as much as I possibly can, so I really appreciate everybody coming and commenting tonight. I have a couple other comments. First, I would like to acknowledge how smoothly in-processing went at Lewis Palmer High School for the high school students this past week. This included the initial process of online registration. It made the process much more streamlined, efficient, and less wasteful, as it was mostly paperless this year. I'd like to thank the teachers and the administrators district-wide for the very positive environments they've created as the year begins for all of our students. And as examples, my own 2 high school children received handwritten letters in the mail this week, one from a more senior student and another from a teacher she had last year, encouraging them as they enter the new year. I think these gestures stand out as exceptional. So thank you to all our teachers for the work they continue to do. And as a member of the board, I'd like to help to ensure that in the future we have ample time to consider options and ideas and solutions as they pertain to the future of the district. It's the only way that I foresee that we can be thorough, thoughtful, and responsible to the community, to all of you. I'd like to provide a framework for creating a highly functional board within timeframes that allow for public input, conversations, and time for board members to deliberate in positive and productive ways. I'd like to be able to deliberate in ways such that there are no unanswered questions, no dark areas, and complete and ample time for as much constructive deliberation as all of us need.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Chris?
Your turn, sir.
I appreciate all the comments tonight and the emails and all the other forms of communication feedback. I appreciated convocation, is that the right term? And Karen's presentation, and it is really about kids first at every level of the school system. It really is about kids first. And I appreciate being a part of this process. I do want to comment briefly about a couple of sessions ago. I voted no on the budget. I thought I'd explained pretty clearly, but Mark, you know, in his way of helping me learn, pointed out I probably should have said, and because of this, I am going to vote no. But in no way, shape, or form should that be construed as me not supporting the budget, because the majority passed that budget, and I fully intend to support that majority. What I would ask is simply that in the future budget discussions, we talk about that composition the way I had asked, so that we don't just always ignore deferred maintenance, as seems to be the case. And so, I apologize for not being clearer, which seems to be one of my good traits, is to not be that clear. And finally, I appreciate the fact that there's 8,000 students in this area, and that there is choice, and there are great teachers, there's a great administration, there's a great community, and I hope with all of my heart that we can unite in a common manner to support kids first. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Ms. Vice President?
Well, I wanted to start by saying that summer has flown by with lots of busy activity and working both in the district and fun with my family, and the start of school tomorrow almost snuck up on me. I still have to go out and buy tennis shoes after this meeting. So I wanted to welcome back all of our amazing teachers and our staff and our students and our families, and those that are new to D38. We really are a great school district, and I'm looking forward to and excited the great path we're on, and I'm looking forward to the 2018-2019 school year. And with that, I wanted to invite everybody to our back to school breakfast with the board. It's a mix and mingle that will take place here at Big Red on Wednesday, September 5th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. That will replace our school board coffees. It's a social situation, a social mingling. Our first DAC meeting of the year will be Tuesday, October 9th from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., which will be led by our co-chairs Deb Goth and Susan Hunter-Smith. People can find out about each school's advisory and accountability committees by going to each school's webpage and go to the Get Involved tab at the top of each school's webpage, and scrolling down you'll find out more information on each of your school's BACs. Some call it the Parent Action Committee or Advisory Committee, and the School Advisory Committee, and that will give you your contact information. Those that have already set up their meetings, you'll find those there as well. I also want to remind everybody that our first SEAC meeting is going to be September 12th, and that will also be here in Big Red. And I'm also excited to introduce Kathy Namika. Kathy, would you be willing to stand up for a brief moment? So everybody can stare at Kathy while I talk about her and make her feel uncomfortable. Kathy is our new secretary to the board, and we had so many amazing applications and resumes, and we interviewed multiple great candidates for the position, but ultimately Kathy stood out as the strongest individual with an impressive resume of experience, strength, and talent. And she comes to us here to D38 with 20 years of experience in organizing and serving in administrative roles, and 7 years working at D20 at the superintendent's office. And I'm personally grateful to have Kathy on board. Welcome aboard. And I'd also, she'll be sharing a office space with Vicki, and I would encourage everybody to stop by Big Red in the next few days or few weeks and give her a hi and welcome her to D38. We're really excited to have her and really grateful for the great work she's going to do. She has experience in everything from board governance to legislative updates to organization to, indeed, serving their superintendent and their school board. So thank you. We are indeed growing in all of our schools. All of our schools are bursting at the seams, and these are our in-district students that are coming to us. So I'm looking forward to the great work we have before us, and I want to see us come together as a community, and I look to the future with all of us together to see what we can do for all of our kids and for the safety of our schools. I'm personally confident with all of us working towards a common goal that we can accomplish great things for our students, our staff, our parents, and our entire community of stakeholders. I've taken your input, your concerns, your praises, your ideas into great consideration, and there's a lot to weigh, and I've studied and reviewed the polls that came out in our school district of what's important to our taxpayers and our stakeholders. I've looked at other school districts and how they incorporated their charter schools in their bonds and what their wording was, and I've looked at the various school builds to see and compare and contrast to how much and how little theirs did and did not cost. And from that, I think we're on a great path. I think we've really got the ability to do some really good things for our kids and put our kids first.
Thank you, Ms. Upchurch. Thank you all for being here this evening. I sincerely appreciate hearing from those of you that spoke. Much like many of you, I have kids in the district, actually a lot of them in the district, and their safety and security is always on my mind, so thank you. Karen, I wanted to thank you for another wonderful convocation. Karen gave a very inspiring message. It was inspiring in such a degree that I asked for a copy, and I'm planning on sharing it with my kids because, quite frankly, I think every kid should see some of those video clips and hear your remarks about how to learn from mistakes. So thank you for that presentation as well as your leadership. We're looking forward to another great year with nearly 8,000 students. We have some of the best teachers in the country. Wonderful administrators, wonderful office staff, bus drivers, and everyone else that makes District 38 great, and we sincerely appreciate all that they do. Kathy, we're excited to have you on board. I had the privilege of sitting in on the interview process, and Kathy just stuck out for a lot of reasons, and she's going to be a great asset to this board, but more importantly, a great asset to this community. And Vicki, I know you'll still be in the same office, but we will sincerely miss you. Vicki is, I think, the first person that I ever met in this administration building when I was contemplating putting my name in for a vacancy on the school board. And I still remember that day I walked in and Vicki made me feel like she was my best friend and she had known me for years. And that's typically how Vicki makes everyone feel. So she is a true asset, and occasionally I might lean on you for some help in certain areas. And I also want to members, we don't always see eye to eye. I've been at the losing end of a 4-to-1 vote a couple times, but I think everyone on this board has a common goal, and that's what's in the best interest of the kids. There's always differences, differences in diversity, quite frankly, I see as a strength. And each one of these board members spends a lot of time away from their professions and from their family to dedicate their time and efforts to making District 38 a better place. So I'd like to thank each one of you. And lastly, I want to thank those of you that send us emails. We get a fair amount of them, and quite frankly, I wish I could respond to each and every one of them, but as one board member, I sincerely appreciate the input of the community. We try to get out. I cover a lot of ground during the school years. I enjoy meeting people. I'm excited that our school board coffees are going to start up again. I look forward to meeting with you, and those of you that are here tonight, if you want to share that information with your friends and come and join us, we're looking forward to hearing what's on your mind and your impressions on what we could do to increase the level of education and performance for this district and make District 38 a better place for our teachers and also for our students. And Ms. Broft, I will turn the time over to you.
And I will make it very quick. First of all, I wanted to just clarify, I think you all know that Vicki obviously is moving on to bigger things, that's for sure, maybe better too. She is going to be working more closely with me as well as taking on some different roles in terms of ensuring that we have some coordination throughout the district. So we are fortunate that we'll continue to benefit from Vicki's expertise, especially during the transition period when Kathy's coming on board. And Kathy will be serving both the board as well as Cheryl in her role. So we're pleased to have Kathy on board and pleased that Vicki's still going to be around as well. So it's the best of both worlds. We are off to a good start. I want to just say that it takes I don't want to use the village term because everyone always uses that, but it takes a lot of people to get ready for the first day of school. And the first day of school is tomorrow, and I can tell you we have had new teacher orientations. We have had training for our teachers. We have had our social workers coming together. We have had our counselors coming together. We have had a training on capturing kids' hearts. We have had, the last 2 weeks, you wouldn't know that we're not in school. That's how hard all of the employees have been working to get ready for the school year. In addition, our bus drivers go out there and drive all the routes. I helped one remove a tree out of the road today so he could get around over at Lewis Palmer Elementary. And our maintenance workers, our grounds work all summer long to make sure that our buildings are ready for the beginning of the year. Our food service workers are definitely preparing meals as they did for convocation, but making sure that we are ready for kids. And every single employee in our district is working very hard to make sure that we put on our very, very best face that first day of school, because we know the minute that student walks in the door, their first impression as they walk in the door can solidify their experience for the entire year. So we want to make sure that first day is amazing. So we are excited about the new year and glad to be getting going on our purpose. Always feels a little strange all summer long with no kids around because that's really why we do what we do. So it's always really exciting to see the kids come back. Just a quick update, we have a state release of Cmos SAT results that we will review with you, and you will see some of those results initially in your dashboard, but you'll get the full results from the Cmos testing. We'll process that and digest it and let you know how to interpret all that in the September meeting. Positive trend for our district continues, so we're pleased with that. We feel like in addition to achievement, we have some excellent growth scores in certain areas that demonstrate that we, even with high achievement, we're moving our kids forward. We've also, you've heard us talk about the online learning that we have going on. We've expanded that quite a bit. Our teachers have built most of our core academic courses for online delivery for grades 9 through 11, and they're excited to provide these opportunities for kids. And we actually had 12 kids this summer that, as a result of our online courses, were able to accelerate in math by taking an online course during the summer. So lots of great opportunities for kids post-secondary wise, but certainly that online component has given us another level of flexibility that we didn't have before. So we're really happy about that opportunity. I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl.
And I apologize, I've got a bit, but I'll go fast. First of all, we've scheduled the first meeting of an Operations Advisory Committee, which will be a Superintendent Committee to just begin the process of making sure that all the pre-bond work that we do is where it needs to be as far as the community is concerned. We have Max Williams, Craig Johnson, and Tony Romano initially willing to serve with us. That'll be our initial core group. We'll see what trades and engineering skill sets are missing and then enlarge from there. And that should at least keep us going until the election. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that. Along those lines, I was really pleased to get an email today from one of Brian's architects stating we are now at 50% on drawings, which is actually quite an achievement. And I'll read a line I wrote to Brian and crew, at least as far as I'm concerned, and I think I speak for the D38 administration. Bottom line for us, when I look at what CRP is doing for our schools and community, it's that CRP is listening closely. They're establishing trust with both our internal and external stakeholders, and they've consistently delivered, and we very much appreciate that with the tight timeline we're on. And with that, you do have in your board packet tonight a recommendation to approve first payment of an invoice towards the CRP work. So I wanted to give you all an update on that. The trail, you may recall that we got a Safe Routes to School trail grant from CDOT in conjunction with the federal government. We're moving forward with that trail, still getting the approvals of both federal and state entities. We hope to start that work in September, and we hope to have it done by year end. Get that trail completed. And as you may recall, the match for that trail was provided by the Woodmore Improvement Association. A technology update. I have two things I wanted to talk about. The first.
Cheryl, may I ask a question
Yes.
about that trail? As I recall, it goes from like Lewis Palmer Elementary to Lewis Palmer Middle to Palmer, right?
That is correct.
How close is it to this Ramada site?
And Dennis is the most recent on that. It goes right behind the back border of the property.
Yeah, not knowing exactly, somewhere between 20 and 60 yards.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Mr. Taylor, now is there a fence that separates that Ramada from that trail?
Currently not.
Okay.
It's in their framework, but at this point.
Can we have you step forward to a microphone, or you could borrow mine, either way? We're getting the cue from upstairs that those at home want to hear from you, Dennis.
Yeah, they're in their plans. There would be a fence behind. At this present moment, it's just a parking lot. There is no fence at this point, and you can see directly into the field where the path would go.
Okay. Do we have a sense for what type of fence it would be?
At this point, it was the same community meeting that a lot of the people in the room were at. They're saying 7 feet high cedar, I think is what he said it was. And so until I actually, saw that line of sight, it kind of goes up on a bank. So I believe, at least from the parking lot, obviously the structure of the Ramada Hotel would have a vision into that path that we'd want to talk to anybody assuming that building.
Okay, thank you. No further questions?
I have one just for clarification, because this precedes my being on the board. Is it a multi-use trail? Do you anticipate students bicycling as well as walking?
There is a trail that's currently there, and I would say that I guess it's not so much man-made as probably has come about over time, but there already was a path I could see.
Right, and a little history on that trail. That trail, that land is controlled by Woodmore Water and Sanitation. When the trail comes in, they will provide access as a part of that trail system to this trail system, and there will be walkers and bike riders, but no motorized on that trail.
So when we measured, and I asked him to measure it based on phone, and I don't know the exact accuracy of it, but when I went and stood on that trail to the back end of that property, that was 350 yards. And again, that's a ballpark of however accurate the phone was that they used. And that's where the current path is that you can see from that parking lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. It's great to have you on SAC. On with the technology piece, a couple of pieces to update the board on. Number one, on August 2nd, we installed a email inbound filtering system called Mimecast. The system relies on DMARC policies to further secure email traffic, and what that is designed for is to make sure that when an email comes in, it doesn't mimic an internal email, so folks think it's an internal email. It's a way to stop that process from happening. Yahoo and AOL create their own DMARC policies. They instruct the system to reject emails from Yahoo or AOL unless it comes from a specific server that they say is an OK server. In other words, they whitelisted the email addresses. The setting is put in place by them, and i.e. the sending domain, and not something that we have control over. Many AOL and Yahoo emails were getting blocked as a result of this AOL and Yahoo policy. We couldn't control that, although we knew, obviously, because it's their domain and their server's not ours. Without making any changes, these two domains have now corrected that problem, and emails are now flowing through. But I wanted to let you all know that that was a problem, but that AOL and Yahoo have taken care of their whitelists. Second item is Pay Schools. What is Pay Schools? Pay Schools is gives our parents the ability to pay their fees online. Pay Schools has a potential vulnerability we wanted to make folks aware of. It's a medium to low vulnerability, but we are looking to see what alternatives we have around that situation. Simply put, Pay Schools has encrypted any credit card information. Their password reset is not best practice in the industry. The password reset, if you say, hey, I forgot my password, will send you your old password. Industry standard is to either give you a reset or a temporary password, to give you a reset screen or a temporary password. We're talking with them to see how they can correct the situation. In the meantime, we've also asked them to put something on their website when folks click on that to tell folks this is an issue. In the meantime, if folks are not comfortable in paying their student fees, they can always send us a check, or we can accept credit cards here at Big Red as well. So I wanted to give you all an update on that.
Just to clarify, I think the salient point here is that they are up to that standard of encryption for credit card payments, so there is no risk if you pay. You're very much protected in that encrypted manner of paying with your credit card and everything. The only vulnerability is if you say, I forgot my password, they will send you through your email, and it's only vulnerable if your email gets hacked or something like that. I mean, because that's why that's the standard, is that you go in and reset. But even though that's not, it's not up to date as much as we would like to see, the site itself is very secure. So.
Last but not least, we are short bus drivers, food service workers, custodians, paraprofessionals. If anyone out there knows anyone who might want to work the same schedule as their students, please go to lewispalmer.org and check out our jobs.
Thank you, Ms. Wongman. I believe Ms. Upchurch has her Board of Education Learning Opportunity.
I'm going to go up there.
All right.
And kiss you guys. Alrighty, so I feel a little short in this seat as compared to sitting there, but we're going to talk about Amendment 73. We're going to have a discussion. So we thought it would be a wise idea, as this comes about, a lot of folks are asking about it. What is Amendment 73? So this slideshow was prepared and shared by the Colorado Association of School Boards. And Amendment 73 is the result of the Citizens Ballot Initiative number 93, known as the Great Schools Thriving Communities campaign. Amendment 73 will raise $1.6 billion in additional revenue for Colorado schools, bringing them closer to the national average in school funding. And the initiative will distribute resources to all school districts throughout Colorado, including Lewis-Palmer School District, and it protects local district control in how we spend those new dollars. A broad and diverse group of organizations began meeting in July 2016 to discuss the need for adequate and equitable funding for all Colorado public schools. Organizations included the traditional education community as well as other organizations that deeply value public education. And this coalition of organizations shared a common vision of education in Colorado, that every student, regardless of where and how they learn, is prepared to thrive and lead in his or her best life. So 2 goals were used when considering the development of this tax policy: raise revenue and fix the structural problems in the property tax system that is known as Gallagher. Core values included raising revenue for education, distributing that revenue equitably based on per pupil funding formula, and ensuring the local benefit and local control. In total, 22 initiatives were filed through the review and comment process, with 19 initiatives receiving titles. And so after much discussion among the coalition partners, a decision was made to move forward with initiative number 93. And CASB was part of that deliberative process, and the CASB board supports this tax policy and the Great Schools Thriving Communities ballot initiative. And you'll see CASB's logo there at the bottom. So Amendment 73 creates what's called the Quality Public Education Fund. The measure creates the Quality Public Education Fund in the Colorado Constitution. So money in the fund is to be used to support and enhance the quality of preschool through 12th grade public education beginning in the fiscal year of 2019-2020. And the fund will contain revenue from a proposed income tax increase. Money in the fund is exempt from the Tabor revenue limit, and it must be used to supplement general fund appropriations for preschool through 12 public education and adjusted each year for inflation for up to 5%. Am I going okay? Get it? So what this slide shows is that all taxpayers continue to contribute to public education. So what Amendment 73 does is it creates an exception to the current law requirement, which is that any new income tax law change requires taxable net income to be taxed at a single rate. Under the graduated income tax structure, which is what Amendment 73 proposes, the tax rate increase will be incremental with the income. So currently Colorado is one of 8 states with a flat tax rate system. Specifically, the measure implements multiple tax rates to apply to individuals, trusts, estates, and corporations. And if the tax increase is approved by voters for the funding of public education, the measure then increases state personal income tax rates on a federal taxable income by the following graduated rates. So, for example, if you're looking at looking at the slide, you'll see that 0.37% of incomes between 150 and 200,000 is what their increase will be. Anybody who has a federally taxable income below 150 will not see a tax increase at all. So as you see, it goes up. So 1.37% for income between 200 and 300, 2.37% for income between 300 and 500, and 3.6% for incomes above $500,000. And that's estimated currently to be about 8% of Colorado's taxpayers would see that. So what we're looking at here is Colorado is a flat tax state, and so Colorado's overall state and local tax system, which consists of sales taxes, property taxes, and income taxes, produces a larger tax burden by percentage of income towards lower income earners. So for instance, in 2016, the median household income in Colorado earned $65,685. So 8.7% of their income went to state and local taxes, while a household earning $150,000 that has the same tax rate equals about 7.5% of their total income being paid in taxes. In real terms, upper income Coloradans are paying more, but it represents a smaller portion of their income in taxes. And so this is Colorado and local only. It does not factor in the federal taxes. So Amendment 73 also increases the state corporate income tax rate for domestic C corporations and foreign C corporations doing business in Colorado by 1.37% beginning in tax year 2019. So all revenue from the individual and corporate income tax increase is deposited in the Quality Public Education Fund and may be retained and spent without further voter approval. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at currently in 2017, the total of 39.63% was taxes, 35% was federal, and 4.63% was Colorado. There are some federal tax code changes that will take effect. So in 2019, they'll pay 21% in federal taxes, and then Amendment 73 will increase their tax rate, like I said, by 1.37, so they'll have a total of 27%. Any questions so far? Okay. So all property tax revenue remains at the local level and goes to pay for schools, roads, fire protection, police, and other local services, as we know. And as the residential assessment rate has dropped from 21% in 1982 to 7.2% in 2016, the non-residential rate has stayed at, which is businesses, has stayed at 29%. So the non-residential assessment rate impacts business property owners, farmers, ranchers, and landowners. So since the passage of Gallagher, the actual value of residential property has dramatically increased, outpacing the value of non-residential property, jumping from 53.2% of property valued in 1983 to 77.6% of property in 2016. So the continual drop in residential assessment rate creates a significant pressure on the general fund and other areas of the state budget. And every time the residential assessment rate drops, the state must backfill the loss in local revenue for schools. So if the current tax rate, what you're looking at here, if the current tax rate for residential property is right now, this year, at 7.2% for residential and 29% for non-residential property. It is anticipated that that'll go to 6.1% for residential and 29% for non-residential property in 2019 without Amendment 73. So the Great Schools Thriving Communities Amendment sets the residential rate at a constant 7% and reduces non-residential rates to a constant 24%. So what you're looking at is the arrow of the proposed and the projected drop and increase. So figure 8 graphically depicts the change in the local and state shares of school finance since the passage of the Gallagher Amendment. So from 1983 until 1981, local school districts covered the majority of the costs of public education in Colorado. And after the passage of Tabor in 1992, the state share continued to increase while the local share has declined. And as figure 8 shows, this pattern accelerated after the passage of Amendment 23 in 2001, but is stabilized with the passage of Senate Bill 7-199, which was in 2007, and that prevented mill levies from falling for most school districts in the state. Beginning in 2019-20, if Amendment 73 passes and until new public school finance laws are passed that meet certain criteria is enacted by the General Assembly, money in the fund must be used to increase the statewide base per pupil funding for preschool through 12 public education by $7,300. It'll increase state funding for the following programs by at least the following specified amounts, and that's what and that includes special education by $120 million, gifted and talented programs by $10 million, English language proficiency programs by $20 million, and preschool funding by $10 million. The above increases are to be adjusted for inflation each year, as I stated earlier, by 5%. And in addition, the measure expands the number of kindergarten and at-risk students that receive funding through the state's preschool through 12 funding formula. Specifically, the measure requires that at-risk funding includes students qualifying for reduced price lunch, and full-day kindergarten funding be increased from 0.58% to 1% per full-time equivalent student. And if I'm not mistaken, that's essentially what the school boards were proposing for the, to fix the funding formula as well, correct?
The superintendents were proposing?
Yes.
Yes, the superintendent formula.
So I'm going to give you guys a couple really quick scenarios, and for the sake of time, I'll try to speed through them.
And one thing, maybe just to clarify, the benefit of the Gallagher, the slides that were like 3 back, the benefit of Gallagher being at 24 is the majority of our businesses in our district are small businesses. They're not C Corps, and they actually benefit through this because of that change from 29 to 24. So that's the point in that slide, is that there is a benefit to small business.
Right. So here we see the funding shortfall that was created by the negative factor during the recession, which was $49.8 million. And while the legislature increased funding last year, D38 will still see about a $4.8 million shortfall this year. Using the funding formula, Amendment 73 will put $9.4 million into education here in D38. And it would take, to put it into perspective, it would take about 18.9 mils in an MLO to reach that funding amount.
Just to clarify, so if Amendment 73 passes, in order for Lewis Palmer School District to receive $9.4 million, we have to pass an MLO locally in order to participate.
No.
At a rate of 18.9 mils?
No, I'm saying that if we were to try to go after and get a funding of 9.5 million, we would have to ask the taxpayers for about 18.9 mils. We don't have to. I'm saying this is a comparison. So Amendment 73 gives our school district 9.4 million.
Okay, so we're not required to raise this revenue locally?
No. It's just saying that
if we didn't have Amendment 73, that's what it would take.
Right.
Correct.
If you tried to raise 9.4 million locally, you'd need an additional 18.9.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So the median income earner here in Monument is about $108,000 with an average home value of about $400,000. So those that are earning 108, they would see zero income tax change, and their home value would drop. Essentially, right now it's 7.2. It would drop to 7% with, and keep it straight. So they would see that from this year to the next, from when it kicks in, about $19 to $37 in property tax decrease. But also, $400,000 business would see a $463 to $930 property tax decrease. So if you had an income of $200,000 with a home value of $500,000, you would see a $60 income tax increase. And there's we'll get to it in a minute, there's a calculator you can go online to see where you fall based on your income, if you're a business owner, if you're, what your home and property value is. So these next slides are just meant to show how the income tax and property tax for residential and non-residential properties play into Amendment 73. So based on the current property tax rate of 7.2 from this year to the next to 7.0, non-residential property rates are dropping. So you'll see an income of $108,000 with a taxable income. Remember, it's federally taxable. So if you make $108,000 a year, your federal taxable income is $89,805. And if your home value is at $400, so your tax change under Amendment 73 would be zero additional income tax. Your property tax savings would be about $19 to $37, and the net change is saying that it would go down between $19 and $37. But what's more significant here is that it would increase per pupil revenue of about $1,600 for a total here in D38 of just over $9.4 million. And here's another scenario, same thing. Basically just same pictures, same words. Again, looking at the same average increase per student, $60 additional income tax revenue. So your net change would be up 14 to 37. And again, this is going up. So if you have $550,000 you'd be paying $4,319 in an additional income tax. And you would be seeing a net of about $1,000, almost $2,000 to $3,000 in additional. But you'd also have $9.4 million in our school district. So in order to see where you really lie, the best thing to do is to go to visit www.cosfp.org, and that's to access the calculator. And when you access that calculator, you'll plug in you get to plug in your own scenario to see where you lie. So the tax calculator allows you to enter your information as a tax filer in order to see how Amendment 73 would impact you and your local school district based on our current assessments and tax rates that are in place today. And so now let's talk about the impact on C corporations. So when Amendment 73's impact on C corps, under the current law, the Colorado corporate income tax rate is 4.63%, which is expected to generate about $580 million in 2018-19 and $616 in 2019-20. So the measure increases the corporate tax rate by 1.3%, as I mentioned before, to a total of 6%, and the rate increase is expected to generate $88.5 million in additional revenue. This content is from the latest version of the Blue Book draft under development. So businesses that pay corporate taxes are typically large businesses that operate across multiple states and countries. So your Walmarts, your Home Depots, on average, the approximately 15,000 corporate income taxpayers with an income tax liability are expected to pay an additional $14,139 per year under the measure. So right now, if our bond and our MLO and Amendment 73 pass, this is essentially a breakdown. So if you are a D38 homeowner and your home is valued at $400,000, you would be looking at $57.84 a month in property tax increase, and for a $400,000 business, you'd be looking at $232.92 in property tax increase. For a total of $1,366 a month or $163.92 a year for the average $400,000 home. That's with both of those measures passing, and for a total of $55.01 per month or $660.12 per year for a $400,000 business. You got a question, Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, sure. I see this as your source. Is this with the interest only for 10 years?
Yes. This is the wrap, yes.
So the point is to show that the amendment will set property taxes at 7% for residential and reduce commercial taxes to 24% and increase taxes on Colorado's top 8% wage earners. So there's some arguments for and against as laid out in, drafted in the Blue Book right now. So the arguments for is that the state needs a sustainable source of revenue to adequately and equitably fund public education. However, the argument against is that the measure imposes a tax increase without any guarantee of increased academic achievement. The measure provides property tax relief for business property owners, farmers, and ranchers who have paid an increasingly higher portion of property taxes compared to residential property taxes. On a government's most important functions is to provide children with a high-quality education, stabilizing the local share of required school formula funding, and creating a dedicated source of state revenue for education, provide additional flexibility for the state to use more of its general operating budget, and on other core programs such as transportation, public safety, healthcare. But the arguments against is that it increases the state income tax rate. An increase in the state income tax rate could negatively impact the state's economy. So businesses will have less money to invest in their workers, and individuals will have less money to spend, save, and invest. The measure complicates an already complicated property tax system by creating one assessed value for school districts and another assessed value for all other local taxing entities. The measure will lead to confusion among taxpayers and further complicate tax administration for state and local governments. And the measure does not allow the state legislature to adjust the income tax threshold to account for inflation. So these are just the current Blue Book fors and against. And so now we have to talk about what our next steps would be. So regardless of where we may or may not stand on Amendment 73, we need to engage in a dialogue on how we as D38 would allocate the additional funds if it passes. So should we use the money to honor our teachers and staff with pay increases? Should we honor our students with needed resources in the classroom? Should we honor our community of stakeholders by addressing capital needs? So that's something that we'll have to have a discussion on if it passes. And our next step should be making sure that we understand 73 as some of our stakeholders have been asking about it and are discussing it in our community. Karen, do you want to talk to this?
Yeah. So as CASB's outlined the steps, the first step that they obviously want us to review is the fair campaign practices. And they wanted to make it clear that all of their materials, including this PowerPoint and all the materials that we attached to the agenda, have all been pre-approved by the Secretary of State as meeting the fair campaign practices requirements. It was important to CASB to do that ahead of time so there would be no question that these were factual presentations of what would happen, and they provided pros and cons, which are the requirements that you have to have in order to meet those fair campaign practices. So they wanted us to make sure that we reviewed the fair campaign practices, which we have done before, but you have that attachment in there to look at it again. And because our public will be asking, they're requesting that the first step they would want a board to take is to be clear on what your sort of intent would be if you had that additional revenue, because they feel like it's a local control issue, and without telling our public, should we get this money, this is probably how we will spend it. Doesn't mean a guarantee, but this is our intent, or this is what we value, or this is what I, Chris Taylor, value, this is what I, Teresa Phillips, value. Just have a discussion so that in public, so that it's clear sort of your thinking around how you would spend the money. That's their next recommended step. Beyond that, it moves into recommendations such as doing a resolution in support, doing a resolution that allows us to share the factual information that have been pre-approved by the Secretary of State. So those are the next steps, and that particular document outlines the steps in order.
So for now, my intent is to make sure that we have a clear and concise understanding of what Amendment 73 is, and where we go with our discussion from there is up to us. So do you guys have any questions?
Is there a timeline on deciding the points that Karen mentioned?
Well, CASB has requested they would like any board members that are going to do a resolution to do it by September. So that would be the main timeline.
That raises my question then is, it says Board of Education do pass a resolution. You then said if we do, so I'm confused.
It's up to you. That's their recommendation. That's a recommendation that they would like all 178 school districts in the state of Colorado to pass a resolution in support, and you have the sample resolution. You can pass it as is. You can modify it. It's really up to you, but they feel strongly that it's important that every Board of Education at least get around the idea that if this passes, there will be additional money. How will we spend it? And do we support the passage of this particular amendment to get more money for schools?
So we could draft a resolution that simply states that if in the event this passes, here's what we would like to use the funding for.
When would we start seeing revenue if this were to pass this November?
Actually, I believe it's in there. I think it immediately begins retroactively for the 2019-2020 school year.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right. I was thinking that I'm trying to do the math. You did it quicker than I did. So we would actually start seeing stuff in January?
Yes.
Any additional questions for Ms. Upchurch? Tiffany, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. All right, are we good continuing on, or does anyone need to take a 5-minute recess? Okay, we'll press forward with the agenda. Consider approve intergovernmental agreement for the November 6, 2018 coordinated election.
I would like to make a motion. Can I do that? Cheryl, you're scaring me because you're moving.
No, I'm working on the computer. You go right ahead.
All right. I'm assuming this is pretty straightforward from last time, from the times before. I'd like to make a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement with the El Paso County Board of County Commissioners and the El Paso County Clerk and Recorder concerning the conduct of the November 6, 2018 coordinated election, thereby agreeing to follow the provisions of the agreement and the election code, appointing Vicki Wood as the district's designated election official, and authorizing the board president to execute the agreement.
Okay, I'll second that. Questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Okay, next agenda item, consider approve resolution dividing ballot question for the November 6, 2018 coordinated election.
First off, I would recommend that we actually do this in two parts. I think that would make it more simplistic if we can do that.
Any objections? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to pass the MLO bond verbiage as presented.
I will second that. Any questions, comments, concerns? Mr. Taylor, or excuse me, Ms. Wood? I'm sorry, looking at you, Chris.
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Poff, were you going to address the second part as well?
I'm obviously at a lack of words. Is that? I personally would like to make a motion to pass the bond verbiage with modifications to it from what we have as was presented. And I believe, Cheryl, I'm going to need help from you. I have it on my iPad. Do you have the numbers? Can you help me with this?
I do have numbers.
All right. I would like to pass it as presented with the following changes. In the verbiage that we have, it refers to 36.5 million. I would like to change that to 33 million. So this would be, for the debt, be increased to 33 million with a repayment cost of not more than
60 million.
60 million. And shall district taxes be increased not more than
4.7 million.
4.7 million annually, and shall such debt be issued for capital improvement purposes, including but not limited to? The first bullet would remain the same. The second would remain the same. I would remove the third one item in there as it's presented. And does the next paragraph remain the same, Cheryl?
Yes, it does.
Okay, does everybody understand what it is that I just made a motion to approve? If not, then we need to clarify. So that's the motion that I made.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Poff, if I seem distracted. I'm having a hard time pulling it up on my laptop.
Well, things are running a little slow with technology because
Okay.
I've been having some problems as well. But it's important that everybody understands exactly what it is that we're discussing.
Okay, any questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, I have comments and concerns.
Okay.
Okay, before we even get into that, I do have a concern where it says including but not limited to. I was looking at D49's bond, and they were much more successful with their bond issue when they were very specific and did not have the words including but not limited to, so that it just said improvement purposes. So I'm not sure that I just don't know that including but not limited to is going to resonate very well with those that are looking for very specifics. And I also think that it wouldn't hurt to add a bond oversight committee like other districts have done when they're putting their bond language together. That's basically is a committee that's overseeing the bond money as it's going through the process.
We would do that anyway. I don't know that it necessarily is included in the ballot language usually.
I think I could help with this.
I saw it on D49's ballot language, and I saw it in Poudre Valley's ballot language. I think it was Poudre Valley.
One option is also for the school board to do a resolution stating that we would put, if this is successful, we would put together that committee. So would we handle it through a resolution?
But I think what Ms. Upchurch is saying is the language, if that would be more appealing to the stakeholders, if that language was included. Is that how I'm understanding you, Ms. Upchurch?
Right, to actually put it into the bond. I mean, we could research that.
I also would defer to our bond.
Well,
the bond council, our bond council was very specific with this language. Both Matt and Chris reviewed it based on the recommendation that she had. The first and last paragraph, you can't really change because those are the way they're required to be stated by law. And her concern is when you start putting a lot of things in there, if you can't carry it out exactly like it's described in there, you're legally liable to do that. And if, say you don't do a committee, say instead you do a different structure, but you said committee, you know, you've got to do exactly what it says in there.
Yeah, I personally would feel more comfortable doing a resolution from the board saying our intentions are to put this committee together. In fact, we had with the 1999 MLO, there was some verbiage around some, I mean, that was before my time, but I know there was, you know, some verbiage about how that was overseen every year.
And Tiffany, you're, so given Mark's idea of a resolution, would you prefer that be in effect before or after the ballot, after November?
I think that we should put if we're going to do resolution, I think it would be wiser to do it before voters, so they know exactly what they're looking at, exactly what we're doing, and there's that we're being as concise and as transparent as absolutely possible.
I mean, that's the reason you do the resolution. I would encourage us to do that resolution in the next monthly meeting to make it very clear that our intentions is to have, I agree completely that I'd love to see an oversight committee of community members to oversee exactly how all of this money is spent.
And could I add on the oversight committee, I think it would be an excellent idea to have, I don't know what the lingo is, some MA people as well as non-MA people on the same committee.
Well, I think we should open it up to the community,
right,
irrespective of what school, if they want to participate.
Well, I think you should have some community members that have no kids in any of the school. I mean, understand, this is I can't ever say this word, fiduciary responsibility of the board that we're spending taxpayer dollars responsibly. 70% of our community has no kids in the district, but they do have a vested interest in how we spend their tax dollars. So I would want to ensure that they felt comfortable that the community was represented.
And that's the advantage of the resolution, is you can describe some of those things in more detail. You also have to be very careful how much you put in ballot language, because the voter, while they like the specificity, it can get so long that you lose your voter as they're trying to make a decision.
So it legally has to have including but not limited to on it?
Yes, because what happens if you discover that there's a big pile of dirt somewhere in the process of construction and you can't spend it this much on X because you have to spend more on Y. And so that's the challenge of when you start saying you're going to spend exactly this amount on a new school, exactly this amount on, because That's why we have contingencies and things like that, because things happen during construction and you may not be able to guarantee that you spend exactly that amount on that.
But isn't that why we were including the contingency over to cover those expenses anyway? So wouldn't that be included in the construction cost?
It would be. I'm just saying that for you to, you can do whatever you want. This was the recommendation from the bond council.
I'm just asking to get clarification so I understand.
I understand this concern. I know Karen does too, and it's something that does get brought up from time to time. Our legal experts do tell us we need that flexibility and to ensure that we stay within the parameters of however this money would need to be spent going forward. That being said, one thing I've seen other districts do, and I don't know if this would meet your needs, is to in that resolution put out some more parameters around what they're thinking and where the board is at and where the board is leaning towards, so that the community fully understands the intent of the board. Because certainly no one can, the community isn't going to be able to understand the full intent of the board out of about 4 inches of language. It takes one. Sure. And that's the resolutions.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I have a comment or two. So what we have before us is the elimination of the $3.5 million for Monument Academy from our ballot language. And I woke up this morning with this recollection that we had voted 4-1 to include them in our bond campaign. And now we're going to vote on excluding them. And I'm not going to repeat everything that was said 2 weeks ago, but this is a curveball. So I probably won't vote for this, Mark, because I think it's a curveball. It's bait and switch, or whatever you want to call it, but it's like, it really confuses me, because I woke up this morning thinking we had already dealt with this. And it isn't uncommon for school districts to support their charter schools. And in fact, we will be one of the exceptions that don't support the charter schools expansion bond in the entire state. Cherry Creek's being one of them, Fountain, Fort Carson being one of them, but then they're part of the Fort Carson, so they get funding elsewhere. But, you know, I'm not convinced that this action embeds confidence in our community of our leadership.
And if I might interject, you are right, Mr. Taylor. At our last meeting, we did vote 4-1. And Ms. Wongman, can you just briefly walk us through kind of the due diligence that occurred after that vote and what, if anything, was discovered?
Yeah, and I know Karen will chime in as we go along. So following the meeting, as the administration started to do its due diligence with the direction the board had been given, I went over that next morning and talked with, or afternoon, Monument Academy leadership. And we talked through just a few things that I believe at the time we thought were just pretty simple things to make sure that the $3.6 million that the board had determined needed to be added on would work through as far as the fiduciary duty of the board that Karen and I had on behalf of the Board of Education. And specifically, we talked about two things. Monument Academy has a Monument Academy charter school. It also has a Monument Academy building corporation. And the charter school we have a contract with as a school district. And in that contract it states very clearly that if in the unlikely event that Monument Academy were to dissolve, the assets of Monument Academy would go over to Lewis Palmer School District 38. It makes sense because the PPOR, the per pupil operating revenue that funds Monument Academy, is flows through the district over to Monument Academy. Monument Academy also has a Monument Academy Building Corporation. Most every charter school in the state has a building corporation. Very, very normal way of funding the bricks and mortar, the schools that the charter school students live in, if you will. And dollars flow from per pupil revenue over into that building academy, and that building corporation, and that building corporation pays the debt that provides the building that the students go to school in. As we did our due diligence, we realized the articles of incorporation for the building corporation did not, in the event that the building corporation dissolved, did not give those assets either to Monument Academy or to Lewis Palmer School District. So the request was simply to make sure the assets, in the event that the building corporation were to dissolve, would go back to Monument Academy or go back to the school district. As I talked with leadership initially, we thought it was a fairly simple change and fairly simple thing that could be resolved. We were later informed that, in fact, that would not be a change that the folks responsible for the building corporation thought it was in the best interest of Monument Academy to make on their articles of incorporation. So I hope that I explained that halfway clearly. Basically, there's two entities involved in Monument Academy, and the building corporation, which holds bonds. If it were to dissolve, the assets would not go back to Monument Academy or to Lewis Palmer School District. The assets would go back to an entity, tax-exempt entity that would support public education.
So to state it clearly, I mean, you know what I mean.
That's okay.
Is basically we would be taking taxpayer dollars into a private corporation, and if they were to have financial troubles, we could not recoup our taxpayer dollars or what it was spent on. We couldn't recover that.
So I think a private entity might be a bit strong of language, because I want to make it clear that the
building corp, it's
building
a 50C3
corporation and is attached to Monument Academy. But in fact, if they were to dissolve, there's no guarantee if they had any net assets, those net assets would go back to the school district or to the charter school.
And most of this was funded with taxpayer dollars.
Yes, the funding is through PPR.
Okay.
Yes.
So the three.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Finish your thought.
Okay.
Because I thought you were going to answer my question.
Just to give you all a little bit more background. Up until 2003, the wording was, in effect, that the assets would go back to the school district or Monument Academy, and then for whatever change at that point, it was reverted out. Know that in our research we did find that some charter school building corporations have language such as the administration suggested, and some corporations have language such as Monument Academy Building Corporation currently has now.
Thank you.
You Ms. Upchurch?
So that 3.5 would not be recoupable?
The 3.5 specifically would be recoupable.
Actually, the property would be, we can do a reverter clause for the actual physical thing that they built. We can go in there with a bulldozer and jack up the gym and haul it away. There's no money to recoup once you build something. And it would still be attached to the building. And the conversation you recall we had last time was that under our contract with Monument Academy, if anything happens and Monument Academy dissolves, the assets are returned to the district. We're first in line. But with the building corporation aspect of this, and it was made clear to us that this was not something that was willing to be done, the building corporation could keep or hold all of those assets or transfer it to someone besides us or besides Monument Academy and then we would get it via them if they've dissolved. So That is a concern, and we worked to try to resolve that, and their response was that Monument Academy Building Corporation is unwilling to do that.
Mr. Taylor?
I find it interesting that the same attorneys that we're talking about here were able to help D20 and TCA, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
TCA come to an agreement for bonding. So it's peculiar to me that the attorneys, same attorneys, in another district are able to overcome these obstacles, but in our district, for some reason, we can't seem to end up in the same place as our neighboring school district, who did support a bond for capital expansion at a TCA.
And I'm not sure what the building corporation for TCA looks like. We didn't look at their building corporation, articles of incorporation.
I wasn't suggesting that you should have or could have. I'm just saying I find it peculiar that the same attorneys who were able to resolve the legalese between the school district and the TCA can't seem to do it between Lewis Palmer School District and the Monument Academy Charter School. It just seems very ironic to me that same attorneys can't come to a similar outcome.
Ms. Upchurch?
I'm still at a loss for words. It does seem like this ties our hands, if that's the case. But I also, just finding out about this morning, I haven't had an opportunity to have any discussions, but I understand discussions have taken place. When I looked at earlier, I came with information on our state statutes that bonds can be issued by a district for supporting charter school capital construction, as defined by 22-30.5, 403, section 4, for what it's worth, or the land and facilities needs of a charter school as defined in that same section, without title or ownership of charter school capital assets being held by the school district, or ownership of use restrictions placed on the charter school. But it also says, and I keep saying this because I'm still trying to learn and understand it, please bear with me, that notwithstanding any provisions to this section, that no bonds can be issued for the purpose of financing a charter school capital construction unless the charter school that is to receive the bond proceeds are willing to revert ownership to the school district in the event of there being a cease of operations. So I'm still trying to process what it means. And I appreciate the discussion.
You know, one of my concerns is we have a fiduciary duty to any stakeholders within the community, irrespective of their Monument Academy or any of the other schools within District 38. From my understanding, we received this information today. Is that correct?
It was Friday. Yeah.
Friday. So I was delayed in looking at my emails. I apologize for that. You know, this board did support Monument Academy, and I would like to continue to support Monument Academy, but I see this as a hurdle that, you know, essentially conversations happen today. I would love to see if our attorneys could take another run at it and see if they could resolve the difference. I am concerned that if Monument Academy went insolvent, that the assets would revert to a third party, not the district. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for any school. So, you know, as one board member, I would prefer, and I understand there's a motion on the floor, and we'll take a vote in a few minutes, but as one board member, I would like to shelve the issue, maybe come back for a special meeting on Wednesday or Thursday of this week, give the two attorneys the opportunity to further address this issue, and if they're unable to resolve the concerns, and then we could take a vote at that time. So that's my position as one board member.
I'd like to address just a couple of things. Chris, you used the term curveball, and I had a little bit of a reaction to that because I think we did give this consideration, great consideration actually, more so than we might have given the really short time frame that this request came in. Quite honestly, if Palmer Lake Elementary or Bear Creek had approached us 2 days prior to our last session in the middle of the summer with a request to add $5 million to our current bond amount, I don't think we would have discussed it more than 3 minutes. We might have all agreed it was a great idea, but given the short notice after the vote to finalize the bond amount in June, we might have let them know that we'd like to help, but bring it back to the table in a more timely manner. So I feel like we have given allowance to discussing this and spending time on it in a very short time frame and without public input. And that was, I said in the last meeting, I was really struggling with those points, and I still was the last couple of weeks. To Tiffany, you mentioned that it ties our hands. I don't see it that way. I see it as a simple stewardship of taxpayer dollars issue. If I can't figure out a way that we could add that amount, keep that amount added to the bond, knowing that if something happened with Monument Academy, we have lost, we have not taken care of our taxpayers' dollars.
I mean, for me, Matt, I know where you're coming from, but I think the longer we just keep flip-flopping or keep beating the dead horse or whatever you want to call it, I think the statements that were provided to us today were very clear and kind of saying, okay, you know, here's another line in the sand, here's another line in the sand. I think we're just going to make it more painful of an event instead of ripping off the Band-Aid or whatever you want to call it. I think it's kind of, for me, I think we need to make a decision. I think their statements to us today were very clear and precise, and rehashing this is just going to make it worse. You know, in June, like Teresa said, we voted on the $33 million. We made a decision. The curveball came after that. The curveball's not tonight. The curveball was in the special meeting, the hastily called special meeting, where we didn't even announce that we were going to discuss adding MA. It wasn't even in the agenda, but yet we did. And also in that meeting, we said we were going to discuss. We didn't say that we were going to decide. So for me, the meeting that we held on August 6th or 9th was a concern. Okay. So I see where you're coming from, and I'm just, to be honest with you, I'm a little discouraged that we're going to come back in 2 or 3 days and see what other curveball is going to be thrown to us. And I have to be honest with you, I think we have to be good stewards of tax dollars. They made it clear in their statement that they were not going to change the verbiage on their building corp. That's what they said. So for me, they made the decision. Coming back and saying, are you sure? You know, can we give you a couple more days to make sure you're sure? Sure. I think we've played those games. I think we should move forward tonight and show the community that we can make a decision to move forward on this with the original decision that we made after 10 months of interacting with our community, all the meetings that we went through. I mean, there was 19 meetings, I went back and checked, over the last year that we spent acquiring all this information that led to the decision in June for the $33 million bond. We owe it to this administration to make a decision. They were clear on their statements today. I think we did go back and say, are you sure today? And their response was, yes. So I think they made the decision. I think we need to make a decision.
You know, and I appreciate your point, Mark, and I concur. We probably didn't notice the last meeting, and the standard policy of this board is we typically have 2 readings of a policy. So essentially what I'm asking is that we essentially have a second opportunity for to hear from the public. You know, both Monument Academy and the district have competent attorneys. They've been around the block a few times. My guess is there's some creative thinking that could resolve the concerns that I as one board member have. And I'm just simply asking to give them the shot. I don't know that 3 days is really going to delay the process. And if they come back and say, well, it is what it is, then we take a vote. But I would at least like to make a good faith effort to explore all options before we shut that door.
So what day are you thinking? This Thursday? Have a special meeting this Thursday?
Correct. It'd be a short special meeting. You know, hopefully we'll have some updates from regarding different scenarios that may resolve this issue. That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay.
I am perplexed that, you know, literally at the 11th hour, we discover this information and they're not willing to rectify it. You know, that is concerning, but on the other hand, I would like to give them another shot.
I think it would be wise to allow them to state their position publicly moving forward. I think it would be wise to make sure that is the ball in their court. And I also agree with your statement that if that is the position and it's unchanged, we do have a fiduciary responsibility. I recognize that as well.
So I'm more than happy to withdraw the motion because I really don't see a reason to vote. I don't have an issue with waiting till Thursday.
Sure.
I just think that the message that was sent to us was pretty clear. This is not our decision. This was their decision.
Yep.
So to come back to the board and say, oh, they took it back or whatever is not the case.
Well, I'm not looking for them perhaps to take it back. What I'm looking at is some additional options to put on the table.
Well, and that's fine to have that conversation that might create more consensus with the board. So I'm willing, that's why I'm willing to wait till Thursday, is because I would like for this to be a 5-0 vote. So we can get to that consensus that we all agree this is the right thing we'd like to do. I think from that standpoint, I'm more than happy to wait till Thursday.
And can I add to Mark's comment?
Sure.
This board didn't raise the issue today that I'm aware of. I don't think our administration raised the issue today. This curveball came from Monument Academy, and I'm perplexed by it, frankly. If it doesn't change in 2 days, I have no issue of the direction we're going.
Okay.
I have an issue with 2 days simply because, and I maybe I'm harping on this issue, I think that doesn't give any time for additional public input. We've already been working under a really short time frame, and I don't see how that would help accommodate public input. It would help us deliberate, but.
I'm not, are we looking for, I think we've gotten community input in the last year, which is how we came up with the decision we made in June.
True.
At this point, I think this is a last-ditch effort to build consensus of 5 board members. I know what my views are, and I've made them very public, and I think others have as well. Matt brought up the idea of if allowing, I guess the question is, would it be Wednesday or Thursday or whatever? I would like sooner or later, to be honest with you. I want to get this over with and get it done. So I would prefer we meet Wednesday night and just get it over with. But if they're going to make a decision tomorrow, we could meet tomorrow night. And you know, I mean, so I just want to build that consensus of the board. I think it's better. No, tomorrow's kind of, is anything happening tomorrow, Karen? Tomorrow's kind of a down day, right? But
not to mention the fact that we have to actually get the agenda. We have a requirement.
Right. So Thursday would make more time. But I'm just saying, I'm willing to compromise to build consensus of the board. I don't need any more information. I think I've made that clear.
I don't know that I was necessarily speaking to needing more information, but just in terms of having a rapport with our community that we are going to be as open and not under a time pressured frame, that we can have really comprehensive discussions. And as, I mean, we all know this is really new information to us. This is brand new to.
But we are in a time crunch. I mean, that's the problem. Yeah. We're running, right, Karen? I mean, am I making the right? We are in a time crunch. We've got to make this decision as quickly as possible. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I am going to withdraw my motion. I think that's the right thing to do. Absolutely. I'd like to make a motion that we have a special meeting this Thursday night.
6 p.m.?
6 p.m.
I'll second that.
Hang on. Questions, comments, concerns? Does that time work for everyone?
I have no idea.
And ladies, I sincerely apologize to do this for you. I know the last thing you want to be is back here with us again, but
it will be very.
Does that work for everyone?
Sure. We'll make sure. My HOA won't be happy because we have an annual meeting and I'm supposed to take notes, but okay.
You have a great excuse.
Yeah, Thursday works.
All right. So Thursday night, 6 p.m. works for everyone? All right. Any additional questions, comments, concerns? Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Mr. Pop?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Karen or Cheryl, can I ask you to send a quick email to Don, let him know the direction that this board is heading, and ask for any additional options that might resolve the concerns that a few of the board members have? Thank you. All right. Next agenda item. Consider approve resolution regarding the vacant district property.
Let me ask a question here. Don't we owe ourselves a second reading of?
I'm more than happy to read it. I've got it right here in front of me. Be more than happy to read it before we have any discussion or any motions, if that's. This is a resolution declaring property which may not be needed within foreseeable future. Highway 83 and Highway 105. Whereas the Lewis Palmer School District 38 Board of Education is charged with managing the financial resources of the district, and whereas the board has been advised that the district owns a parcel of vacant land consisting of 69.7 acres located at the southeast corner of Highway 83 and Highway 105, parentheses Walker Road, hereafter referred to as property, and that said property is not projected to be needed for district purposes within the foreseeable future as provided in CRS 2232-110 subsection 1E and board policy DN. And whereas the board wants to ensure financial resources are used to the maximum benefit of the district, now therefore it be resolved that the Lewis Palmer School District 38 Board of Education declares that said property is not needed for the foreseeable future and should be sold on terms acceptable to the board.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
That was not a motion. Okay. I said I was willing to read it. I definitely did not.
But I'll make a motion, if I can.
Sure.
To approve the resolution declaring vacant district property located at the intersection of Highway 83 and Highway 105, Walker Road, is not needed for the foreseeable future and should be sold on terms acceptable to the Board of Education.
I think actually the motion you should have said is, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution as presented. Because you didn't change it, right?
Didn't change the resolution? I hope not.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, questions, comments, concerns?
Like I discussed earlier, I don't think we've given the community enough time to really to understand that this is land that the board thinks might not be usable. Plus, in the last work session, we had an individual who came in here and sat down and said that the #2 growth area in our school district is out in the Kilmer area. Well, that's right where this land is located, is in the Kilmer area. So after the number one area of growth starts to fill up, that's going to be the area in this district out at 83 and 105 is where this district is going to grow. So I personally feel that we have not given the community enough opportunity. This is really the first time that we've publicly, in a monthly meeting that's streamed and recorded, where we've informed our community that we believe there's a chance that this land is not usable. I think we need to obtain more information before I'm comfortable in saying that this land is not a use. And I personally feel that the land is definitely usable in the foreseeable future for our school district. And so I personally will not support this resolution to sell this land at this time.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I have a comment that is on the growth in the Kilmer area. If you'll recall the map actually grabbed the Kilmer area, and then on the south it went west, and it pulled in that new subdivision called, what's it called?
Home Place Ranch.
Home Place Ranch? Yeah, so the growth is Home Place Ranch with 600 and some odd homes, more so than just Kilmer itself, just for clarification.
Yeah. Well, I'm very clear that for me, I just believe that that land, at this point, I don't believe we can make the statement that it has no educational use in the foreseeable future. I can't support that statement.
And yet, the RTA came up with a plan that suggests 2 schools in the south side, and in the foreseeable future, they did not see utilizing that property. So it has been in the public domain for a significant amount of time.
What is the time frame of foreseeable future?
It's what you think.
Depends which attorney you ask.
We tend to look at that based on those projections, those 8-year projections that we did when we began the long-range facilities planning process. So foreseeable future in that case encompassed what we believed we would see need for in those 8 years of growth that were projected in that process.
Yeah, for me, it's about 20 to 25 years, because what I'm concerned about is we actually got this land for under $300,000 years ago, and they purchased this specifically for long-term future. I could see in 20 years, if the growth goes the way, after we fill up the I-25 corridor, we're going to be going, we need 70 acres east of 83 and 105. How unfortunate that we don't have any property. It doesn't cost us anything to keep it. It's only going to go up in value. For me personally, I think in 20 to 25 years, you could see a school board coming back saying, that probably wasn't a good idea.
I tend to agree with you. In fact, that's why there's an MOU between the owner and Monument Academy about utilizing it for a school. And to be careful, but at the same time, there is an intended educational purpose associated with this sale of the property.
And just to clarify, you meant a MOU between the buyer, right? And Monument
It's not
Academy.
between us, no.
Right, yeah, because you said owner. I just wanted to make sure. Since we're the owner, I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. The buyer.
The
Correct.
buyer.
Thank you.
So when I first heard about this property, I was certainly not a board member. I was a general public person. And I heard dialogue around this property. I saw land for sale signs on this property. I saw MA talking right there at that table, talking to the board while I sat on that side of the seats talking about this property. I heard this property talked about in multiple forums throughout the district before I ever got elected. So I do think that the discussion has taken place about this property. And I do think that it has been put out there that this property was for sale. If we had never intended to sell it, then why did we put the for sale sign up last fall? And if we're looking at the foreseeable future and we know that an education facility is going to be built on that location, then it seems like it actually does fit the needs, and it does allow us to have general fund money in our capital fund. It fits the education need, and it makes sense to do this here and now. I don't have any problem with having discussion, but it seems like, Cheryl, could you run us through the history of this property?
Best I know, yes.
From what we talked.
So the property was originally purchased while Ted Bauman was a part of the school district from the Unger family, and the property was purchased as a possible high school site, and because the board at that time was worried about growth and ensuring that it had land available for a future site. Following that, obviously the district's had it for a number of years, and the agreement was that the cattle could be grazed on it until it was used for school. Following that, prior to my arrival, so it would have been about 14 years ago, the district did take a look at that site for a possible high school. It was determined at that time, because of constraints on the property, there's some visibility issues on Walker Road, as well as the ability to gain water and sewer, that in fact the maximum number of students that site could likely ever hold would be somewhere in the 800 student range. Following that, in about 2007, 2008, a group of individuals did a long-term land planning study for the district. They looked at the site as well and came to that same conclusion, that it could possibly be used as a middle school site, but would never be used for an elementary site because Kilmer was so close and it wouldn't be feasible to put a high school on it. So that's the history. The boards at that time decided to hang on to the property, thinking about what about future growth and what should we do in the future. But that gives you a brief overview, I think.
And would you also like the timeline for what we've done recently with it? So in spring of 2017, the request from the board was that a sign be placed on 83 and 105 stating the land was for sale. In July 2017, that sign was placed. An appraisal was completed that same month. In fall of 2017, well, sign was vandalized and replaced. Notable event. And then July through December, Cheryl was accepting interested people who had an interest in purchasing it. She was accepting names for that, for those interested parties. We discussed a bid process in September of 2017. October 2017, there was an expression from Don Griffin in an interest in bidding for the land. And then the board considered a first right of refusal for the land for MA, and interested parties were updated. Then there was again, another expression by MA that they would be interested in that land. Interested buyers continued to be connected. Then there was a tour in March of 2018 of the land with the Board of Education. The sign was removed. The board discussed leasing the property to MA. MA communicated they did not want to do that. Then there was an opportunity for it to be purchased by a third party and donated to MA. And that's kind of where we are right now.
You guys are a wealth of
information.
No, actually, I appreciate that. Actually, your wealth of information, that's why you're so amazing. Thank you.
Kind of my assessment of the situation. In my line of work, I defer to experts on a regular basis. I think there is some value of a school, maybe an elementary school or a junior high, but considering the value of property right now, and if we're not going to use it, it makes sense to capitalize on it and make sure the money's designated via resolution for purchase of another property down the road. As one board member, I have some logistical concerns about how the district would use the property. You have the ingress, you have the egress issues, you have the water issues, you have, I believe, the easement that runs in front of the property, ingress and egress from Highway 83. So, my perspective as one board member, I would like to, first of all, see if there's an opportunity to buy a parcel that might be a little more flexible for our needs. You know, perhaps a larger parcel that would have ingress, egress on 2 sides instead of 1. That perhaps we could look at 1, 2, or maybe 3 schools. And right now the real estate market's pretty hot, but eventually it's going to go down. And much like that, you know, board, 15 years purchase, I want to make sure that we're planning for the future. And to some degree, I think we would be locked into what growth opportunities we have if we keep that parcel. So in the event that we do sell it, which I support, I would like to make sure the money is set aside and that we only use it for additional purchases down the road. As far as the timing, Mark, you know, you bring up a valid point. Even though we've been discussing this to some degree since spring of 2007, this is really our first board meeting where we essentially have public comments. I would not be opposed to couching this issue and giving the public the opportunity to voice their opinions one way or another and vote on it in our September board meeting. But you know, at this point, unless the dynamics change, I think the district would be better served finding a better parcel of property.
I appreciate your thoughts there. I think it's clear that Monument Academy wants to build on that property, and for us to continually delay their progress over the sale of the property when they've met every condition we placed before them seems irresponsible to me.
Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Well, as one board member, once again, my proposal is that we give the community another opportunity to hear it, and I would be more than happy to vote for the sale of the property next month. So if we're taking a vote tonight, I will probably vote no, just because I want to give the community the opportunity to express their opinion. And my position is as stated. Okay?
So, isn't this the second reading of the resolution?
Well, the problem that we have is the first resolution was at this special meeting that we had on August 6th. It wasn't noticed, in my opinion, correctly. We didn't have the opportunity for public comments. And so my perspective is this is the first opportunity that we've had to put it in front of the public and to hear their comments. You know, and Chris, I understand where you're coming from. It has been a long process. I think Monument Academy would be a good fit, but once again, I think we need to give the public the opportunity to express their concerns.
I completely agree with that. No surprise. So I like the idea of putting it on the September agenda.
Actually, before you call a vote, can someone actually, at this point, make a motion to table? And wouldn't that supersede the current motion? Is that, who's our expert on Robert's rules?
But you still have to address the motion or withdraw.
Yeah. So you need to withdraw the motion, or?
Well, it's not me.
Well, Mr. Taylor.
I don't want to withdraw the motion.
Okay.
It's interesting because I was willing to compromise in the last one for exactly the same thing that Matt just said.
It's not exactly the same, but I know it is in your mind.
All right.
Okay. Take a.
Or let's say, let's go with Mark here. We gave him 2 days or 3 days. Is that better than September?
No, I think you have to go to the next monthly meeting on this matter.
Oh, so it isn't exactly the same.
Okay, you made your point.
Okay. Would we like to take a vote?
Absolutely.
All right, Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen?
Nay?
Mr. Pop?
No.
Ms. Phillips?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yay.
Ms. Upchurch?
Yes.
Okay. And just so we're clear, Ms. Wood, can we add this as an agenda item for the September meeting?
So don't we need to make a motion to table or no?
We just voted the resolution down, which is kind of interesting because we just voted that resolution down, which is kind of why I wanted you to table it, because that gives a negative connotation, but you were so wanting to do it.
Well, the bottom line is Mr. Taylor has his position, which I respect, so does Ms. Upchurch. My concern is not that Monument Academy gets the property directly or indirectly, it's just a timing issue.
I understand exactly what you were doing, and I thought it was a great compromise.
Can I just clarify exactly what the community input that you're desiring is, and is there a direction that you have for administration to run some sort of community input, or are you just gathering comments at the regular board meeting? What's your thinking there? We just need to understand what our expectation is.
Well, my direction as one board member would be just simply, it's an agenda item that we discussed tonight. The public is aware of it. Anyone reviewing the notes will also see that there was a motion made tonight that was not passed, and we're just simply adding it to the agenda for next week, or next month. I'm not asking for additional community deliberations or anything of that nature unless some other board member thinks that it's necessary.
No, I think it just gives time for comment by the public if they want to email us or bring comments to the next board meeting.
That's what I was going to assume, but I didn't want to get to September and discover that there was a different assumption out there.
All right. All right, are we ready to move on? First reading of revisions to policy DJA Purchasing Authority.
Oh, Matt, I mean, we just skipped 2 items, which I think we're all good with.
You know what, Mark, I apologize. It was
But
on the.
I personally would like to make a motion to table the next 2 items until the next school board meeting.
I will second that. Questions, comments, concerns? Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Mr. Pop?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Nay.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Mr. Boff, thank you for letting me know I skipped those agenda items. Okay, I'm getting back to item number 7, first reading of revisions of policy DJA, Purchasing Authority.
Don't we need to do number 6? We need to table number 5 and number 6.
I
We
did say
them
5 and
together.
6.
My
Yeah,
apologies.
the next 2 items.
Do we have, are there any objections if we take a couple-minute recess?
No.
Okay, so it is 9:25. Do we want to say 5 minutes, so 9:30?
Please.
Here's her summer presentation.
Oh, chocolate? What? Thank you.
We're live.
Hey, would you mind passing this around to everyone in the audience and see if they want to Karen, do anything?
Since Mark's on the audience. You know the meeting's on.
Okay, we are back on the record. Ms. Wongman, we'll turn the time over to you.
Just briefly, per previous board discussion, the administration is making the recommendation that the purchasing authority delegated to the superintendent be increased from the current $25,000 limit to $50,000. It is the first reading, and the only change would be that that 25,000 changes to 50,000.
Thank you, Ms. Wongman. Summer projects update.
I'm just going to push buttons. Karen, do you want me to get started?
Sorry.
I can start it if you want.
Talk amongst yourselves. Okay.
While Karen's getting together, this first slide here is as of a week ago now. You see the enrollment, which is the blue line, and then the black line right below it is the 17-18 enrollment. This data is now a week old. We have for you some updated numbers. We would project that we will grow approximately 130 students by the time we get to October 1 count.
So no change since the last time?
No change since we talked. The trend continues.
So if I understand that right, we're below the forecast, but we're on budget. Is that right?
No.
We
We're
are
over the
below the
forecast.
Metro Study forecast of
Right.
200 students.
Right.
We're a little bit above the budget that we put in of 80 students at 130.
Oh, so we're 50 above
Yeah,
budget.
yeah. We'll see where we get on October 1, but that's the way it looks right now. And the trends for the last few years, year over year, are pretty consistent, where we can start to gauge.
Okay, so moving along, I finished chewing my almonds. We have closed a significant number of grade levels throughout the district because to out of district and out of boundary enrollment. We have a different, as you recall, last year we approved a new policy that indicated that there was a cutoff for in-district and out-of-district, and so our principals have been using that as a guideline and have had to close quite a few grade levels, and in some cases, Bear Creek, I believe, is completely closed now to out-of-district and out-of-boundary. This is due to space as well as staffing. 3 teachers and 2 paraprofessionals have been added to help with some of those increasing numbers, and we are moving forward with supporting those schools. So summer production, we've got facilities improvements. We did the turf and track at Palmer Ridge High School. We added gravel parking at Palmer Ridge, much needed. You know, if you've ever been at an event at Palmer Ridge, there's never enough parking. Kilmer Univents, and those are those crazy noisy things that prevent kids from learning, and so we always want to be able to get those under control before they start really starting to make noise, because when they start to go out, they really get noisy. So we've also done that. So we have installed a camera security system for both high schools and Kilmer. That was on our plan that we presented to you last year. And we've also placed, we've begun to plan for the next phase of those cameras for Lewis Palmer Middle School and Bear Creek Elementary, also on our plan that we presented last year. We also removed, based on the SEPTED report, we moved shrubs to improve the line of sight at Palmer Lake Elementary. We have conducted threat assessment training with the administration. Reunification we've done some reunification training. We're going to be doing more. And we created a list of training needs with regard to safety and security. And then we also installed the Mimecast additional email security software that caused all the AOL users and Yahoo users to not be able to get through our system for a little while, but that's been resolved.
Karen, can you elaborate on what reunification means?
Great question. Okay, so if there's an emergency and we have to evacuate kids to another site, that's that sort of how do you reunify parents and kids without mass pandemonium.
Thank you.
So we, as you know, went to an online registration system. An incredible amount of work getting that going, but it has been going very well in terms of implementation. Many parents have commented on that it's helped make the check-in process much easier. We also had quite a bit of information that I shared with you earlier about summer learning that happened. We had visible learning, we had assessment literacy, we had capturing kids' heart. Obviously, we did a lot over the summer. There wasn't a lot of times when this particular room was empty over the summer. So great that we have staff that really want to keep learning. And then coursework for students, we've added those online learning opportunities that I talked about in high school. Online courses are now available for all core areas. New teacher orientation, we reviewed it, we modified how we did that, we enhanced learning opportunities. We had safety and security training for all of our new staff members, and emergenetics, again, we continue to offer an opportunity for everyone to learn about their profile in emergenetics as they come on board, and that's really enhanced our ability to communicate and build strong teams.
And how is Ms. Phillips?
She and I have not had a chance because
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Are you emerging?
I'm emerging. I did my due diligence, but we haven't met yet.
We haven't had a chance to debrief yet. We're going to wait till after school starts and she gets all of her kids in school. And then we'll be able to come up with kind of a new explanation of kind of what our team looks like, which will be helpful too. Again, lots of different opportunities to, one of the things we do with our new teachers, take them around and give them an opportunity to look at our district through a bus tour that Bob Foster conducts, and he, of course, knows every historical thing about our district, so it's always very informative for everyone. And time to get to know their principal and their new staff, as well as we call it, drinking out of the fire hose, because they get quite a bit of information in a short period of time. So,
did they do the bus tour already?
They did. Yeah, new teacher orientation all took place before convocation. So coming up, you're going to see more about enrollment at in the September meeting, and then obviously you're going to have a couple updates with enrollment. We will start watching it very carefully in September because that October count comes. So we'll see that. So that's pretty much it. Any questions? Thank you, Cheryl.
All right. Moving on to the next.
I'm just going to say one thing real quick. On the turf for Palmer Ridge High School, I wanted to reiterate, in case there was some, because there seemed to be some confusion, that that's a needed necessity in our school district. If we don't upgrade that turf, our athletes can't be on that field, and if our athletes can't be on that field, we don't get to have athletics because of it's expired turf.
And it's unsafe to even have it out there where other people might be using it. It becomes a liability.
It becomes a liability.
Anything else? Monthly dashboard.
It's a bit early to begin to look at trends, so I used the opportunity to answer a couple of questions I thought folks might have about salary and benefits and how we track variances.
I'm sorry, Miss. Are we allowed to ask questions? Oh.
Ms. Phillips, you could always ask questions.
Okay, thank you. Going back to the Initiative 73, and so I'm thinking along two lines. We would decide, or we would make recommendations on what would happen with that money. Can you speak to how, and then at the beginning of the meeting, you mentioned that we were low on bus drive transportation, nutrition services, and one other I can't remember right now.
Yeah, parents.
Are we, would we be able to fill those positions easier if the salaries were higher or the wages were higher?
And I know Karen will jump into this too. yes, I do believe we would be able to fill those positions easier. If funds of that nature to come through, I believe that knowing this board, you all would have quite a bit of discussion of your overall strategic priorities around that sort of thing, compensation, teacher shortage, as Chris mentioned, the capital deferred maintenance needs that we have, and try to establish, if you will, a foundation for how the district might move forward, finally receiving some part of the funds that we lost during the recession. So, and I don't know if Karen would want to add to that, but that would be my recommendation.
Yes, there's a lot of areas of tension, there's a lot of areas of tension that we've had since the recession, where we have not been able to sort of come back from and address. One is the number of periods a day that high school teachers are teaching. And so if we think about that additional money that would come from Amendment 73, I know one of the things many boards in the past have expressed, they would love to get our high school teachers back so that they don't have so many kids on their course loads, so that they're teaching 5 of 7 instead of 6 of 8. And so I know that there's a cost to that, which is why we changed it, because there was a cost savings, but to implement that again, it's an ongoing yearly cost that's significant. Also, maintaining class sizes costs money because it's attached to benefits and salaries. And then obviously just remaining competitive, like you said, Teresa, with every area, bus drivers, teachers, and realizing that we have to be competitive at a time when everyone else probably, if they get more money from Amendment 73, will also be raising their salaries. So it's going to be a challenging thing that we'll be working against. That answer your question?
Yeah, it did. I'm just wondering now, and I know this is diverging just a little bit, but what's the timeline on that? Is this something we can continue to discuss through the fall? Because the money would start coming in January. I mean, I'm assuming we wouldn't wait until after the vote.
The request, the request from CASB is that the board make a clear resolution in September so that it is communicated to the public how that money would be spent, so that there's no question, so that because the idea it's bringing local control back to the school district, so people want to know how will that money be spent locally before I decide whether to vote or not. So.
And then I'm thinking through my head, so September is next month. And so would we, to me, you are the experts, and we would need input. So is this on the agenda for September then?
I would suggest that we talk about it at the September work session.
Okay.
And then that would allow us to develop a resolution if that's what you want to do before the actual meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, let's move on to the next agenda item. Assessment dashboard, Ms. Benton, or excuse me, Dr. Benton.
Any questions pertaining to the assessment dashboard for this month?
Good place to start.
I would highlight that we had 1,300 exams between 2 high schools. That's an outstanding number of students accessing the opportunity to earn college credit while in high school.
And I will say, seeing that you said that I really wasn't paying attention, which I never do, because I don't pay attention much. And I just realized that both of my boys, who are now in college, my youngest started his first day today, because of AP classes, they're going to save me a lot of money. And I realize some people are like, because the AP exams are what, like $100? And sometimes people, that's kind of expensive, $100 for an exam. You need to be thinking of the big picture, because it's potential that with both my boys, they could each knock a year off of their college because of AP classes. That, at School of Mines, that could save me a heap of money. So I just want to thank, this district has done a wonderful job. I think our AP courses, which is what all those things are on the wall that everyone just looks at but doesn't read, is talking about the fact that we are committed to helping our kids through college and prepare them for college. So I think that's a tremendous fact that so many kids are using these AP courses.
Thank you.
I would also like to give kudos to the teachers that teach the AP classes because they really do a thorough job, and our kids really do a fantastic job on their AP tests. And when my Mines kiddo entered into school with the experience he gained from his AP physics class, the professors were impressed. They said he was right on it. So, and that came from because he had a good teacher.
Great.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you, Dr. Bitton. Next agenda item, construction manager, general contractor update.
Why don't we delay that, because I believe that our individual had to go home. So we'll delay that until Thursday.
Is this going to be a month? Like, this is the first time I've seen this, and I guess I missed it. So we're just planning on having this conversation each month. We're just going to add it and
It's just an FYI, it's just for you to know.
Okay.
Next item is the consent agenda. Before we vote on it, I believe there's some discussion regarding the CRP contract.
So to do this, we should pull an item out, right?
Well, I don't know that we have to pull anything item. We could discuss it before we.
Oh, perfect. Outstanding.
So we alleviate a step. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, so you have in your consent agenda item tonight a request for approval of initial invoices from CRP for work performed to date, half value of the work performed to date. You also have in your executive content a draft of the architectural agreement. We're not asking for approval of the architectural agreement tonight. We will come back, I believe, and add that with the board's permission to the next board meeting agenda and ask for approval for that. So that's, just wanted to clarify that folks understood the request for today.
I had a question on another item. Oh, we're still talking about CRP, sorry. We're still talking about that. I jumped the gun.
Any other questions regarding CRP?
Are we paying them from our capital account?
Our recommendation would be that we either pay them from our cash and lieu account or from our general fund reserves, and the administration would think that either of those would be appropriate. This first payment I had intended to pay out of the general fund, but it would be equally as appropriate to pay it out of the cash and lieu funds.
Yeah, my opinion would be to pay it out of the cash in lieu of fund because that's for capital expansion program.
It absolutely
and this is
fits.
Definitely just the first cost of the elementary school. And if the bond doesn't pass, for whatever reason, the funds have been expended and the value is still here.
Absolutely.
So that would be my recommendation. I don't know.
Do we need to vote on that?
I don't think so. I think there could be a consensus of the board, and I would defer to Chris's best judgment.
I
and it
agree.
sounds like Cheryl's on the same page. Tiffany and Teresa?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I concur.
So having that conversation, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Again, before we second that, I believe Ms. Upchurch wanted to address one additional item. Mr.
I did want to address one additional item. I had a question about number 7, the resolution, Colorado statewide investment pool. It's short and sweet and simple, but can it be explained to me a little bit of what it means? And B, since we're now doing shouldn't we do a second resolution reading like we're doing with the others? Or am I not understanding this? I may not just be understanding it, and I apologize.
We're not in a hurry. You could certainly do a second reading on this. A little bit of of history. A new statewide pool for school districts within the state of Colorado was developed. It's been probably about a year and a half ago. This would give us, as a school district, a little bit of additional flexibility in terms of access to our money versus a CD, and also rate of return versus what we currently have from our local banks. Our process in getting it to this point was to check with RBC, our bond underwriter, because obviously they have quite a financial background, as well as our financial advisor, Hilltop, and then it was discussed at the audit committee as well, just briefly to make sure that this seemed to be a good way to go. My review of it, as well as the other folks have reviewed, we believe it'll give us increased liquidity, but also increased rate of return. So we'd like to start down the path, and that's kind of a nutshell of what it's all about. We'll be, gosh, there's about 30 school districts that have already signed on. It's been going for a while.
So my thoughts are, I think it's a good idea, but I also, given our discussions we've had over the last 2 meetings, it would seem that it would be more appropriate to go ahead and use this as our first reading of this resolution and then vote at it at the next board meeting in September if that, if there is no time. Okay.
All right, any other questions, comments, concerns regarding the consent agenda? Mr. Poff, would you like to?
Well, here, let me.
I'm sorry. So I need to understand what you just said to me. Was there a first reading tonight?
So, so if we read this tonight, wouldn't that be a first reading?
If we did, but are we? Is that the plan then?
That's what I'm asking. Is given that we're trying to make sure that we're giving resolutions ample opportunity, should we read this now and then vote on it in September?
I'm good. I'm more than happy to change up.
So you would like to withdraw your motion?
Right, and I'll make the motion to pull number 7 out for a second reading, but.
Hang on, you first need to withdraw the motion.
Okay, withdraw the motion.
Okay.
I just want to clarify, because I think Karen might be a little, some resolutions we don't do 2 readings on.
No, we don't always do
So
2 readings of resolutions.
We're not setting a precedent by saying that everything we do, we're going to read resolutions twice, because sometimes they come down. It's not a policy change, which is the school board policy is for policy changes we do 2 readings. I don't believe the school board policy for resolutions is 2 readings. I'm more than happy to pull it out if you're not comfortable with this resolution in the consent agenda.
No, we just did this for the land use.
And
so
we did it for a reason. So I'm more than happy to do it, but are you suggesting that for every resolution that we do 2 readings? Because that we need to make a board policy if we're going to do that, or is this one just concern you that you think the community needs a second reading?
No, I think that this is a good policy, a good resolution. I think we need to move. I agree with the resolution and then giving us more liquidity. Is that a right word? I'm just wanting to make sure. I'm confused now on navigating resolutions.
Well, that's why I brought it up. I mean, I could have just yanked it out and moved on, but I just wanted to make sure that you understood. So, like, Chris, I know there's something you want to say. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this has been reviewed by the audit committee. It's been reviewed by RBC.
RBC and by Hilltop, our financial advisor.
Right. So this has been by the financial professionals. This has been through the mill. It's been pure, fully vetted, and so the question comes back to what Mark said: is do we need more time for the public to understand it? And I guess that's the question. But I'm not sure more time is going to help necessarily.
Sure, I get that, but I think we could say that about some other items as well.
We could say it about everything, and we'd have first and second I mean, we'd never, the ship would stop if we were to do 2 readings on everything. So I'm just, and again, out of the sake of compromise, I'm more than happy to do it. But I personally, I'm with Chris, at least I think I'm with Chris, that I don't believe this is something that justifies a second reading. I mean, that is my opinion. but I don't want,
No, I'm comfortable voting. I am comfortable voting on it, but perhaps another discussion in the future during a future work session would be, what do we define as worth second readings and first readings? What's the defining factors?
and I think it's very acceptable for a board member to actually call an item out and say, I'm a little uncomfortable about this item for X, Y, and Z reasons. I would like to table this for the next meeting to allow I mean, all of that stuff is appropriate, excuse me, for anything. So we can have that conversation. So it sounds like from what, I think I'm back to making a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Tiffany, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns? Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
All right. I think that concludes our business for this evening. Is there anything else we need to address, ladies?
Nope.
All right. We stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Poff, I have a pretty thick stack here, and I presume some of these documents.
Which we couldn't sign until we passed the consent agenda, correct? Yes, the meeting is adjourned.